So I'm Vica. I am 28. I'm from Russia. I grew up in the UK and moved to California 3 years ago. And then we started working together about 4.5 months ago after I had been following her for a while on Instagram and got really intrigued by the whole Attract program. My intention and my motivation for reaching out was that I felt like I was in a glut or like was running up against a wall with my personal life and my dating. I had broken up with someone 4 months before I reached out to Ella. So those wounds were kind of calmed, but I wanted to be more intentional and more strategic about how I was going about attracting or looking for a partner in life. That's just something I don't think I've ever done. I never really applied that strategy and thought to my personal life, whilst the rest of my life was pretty strategic and thought out, I'd say, relatively speaking. So it just felt like there was structure or some intentionality missing. So initially it was all about figuring out how to attract the right partner. I guess what it turned into was how to first figure out who I am and figure out the best version of myself. That sort of had to come before we got into the relationship and attraction part of the program. I know what the highlight was because there was definitely a very transformative experience for me. We went into a series of sessions where we were working through some of the worst relationships and traumas and faulty thinking that I was carrying with me into my current state and my future imagined self and sort of relationships. So we did what I kind of described to others as a combination of things that ranged from, holistic kind of astrological almost stuff through to really applied psychological, hypnotic in some cases, exercises and everything in between, breath work, journaling, intention setting. But there were a few weeks there where we really went quite deep on the parts of my dating history that I needed to close out and say bye to, and sort of actually going into those moments and those relationships in a sort of trance state and saying what needed to be said and hearing it from all sides was just incredibly valuable. Then there was a breathwork session that we did that was the most intense breathwork session I've ever done, and it was completely by Zoom, which was crazy. And then there was the most valuable session for me was the identification of the old and the new versions of myself, and the kind sort of request for the old version to step aside and make space for the new version, and feeling and embodying what that new version was. That was very transformative moment. Those few weeks led to that transformation for me. My life's just so much better in so many ways since then. It changed everything. Frankly, I feel both the original goals are more or less reached now because I am saying no and I am listening to my intuition when it comes to looking for partners and exploring dates and connections and opportunities and offers. But I'm also, more importantly, just living in much greater alignment and making decisions every day in much greater alignment with the aspirational version of me, which has become the version of me that is here today. And that just, I don't know how else that could have happened, honestly, other than through my work with Ella. I didn't realize how much power I had to change. Before these sessions, it felt like life kind of happened to me and that I was acting in these certain patterns, ways that were just beyond my control. They were like my condition, my disorder, my routine, my habit, my pattern. It felt really hard to imagine deciding that wasn't me anymore. But it really kind of was that. It really was just a much more sort of embodied and deep and subconscious as well as conscious evolution that happened pretty quickly in this case. But it really was, the power really was always in my hands to affect that change. And realizing that it had been a really long time coming, that I had been doing things I didn't want to do, activities, people, situations. I was partaking in these things just out of automatic, habit. But they were already running up against the version of me that I needed to be. Realizing all of that was happening and under my control to stop was incredibly powerful. I truly didn't think I would ever be able to just stop some of the habits that I quit and some of even just the perspectives on myself that I held. I thought those were always going to be part of me. Learning that all of that was within my control was pretty transformative. Okay, so I can only speak for myself because I think everyone's going to need to see it for themselves to really say that to have an opinion on it, right? It makes so much sense for me The things we discussed were just like a deeper dive under the hood of the qualities that I already knew I was carrying in me. And then the really interesting thing was that we started with that reading Spoons and the Two Sons. 3 of them, I was like, yes, that's me. Absolutely. I am living with that right now. And then the 4th was like the opposite of who I was in that first session. And that felt so interesting to dig into, because that was a piece that was missing from my life. And that was the piece that I needed to bring in order to unlock all of this growth. That set me up to realize that and to focus on what needed to change and what was missing, rather than just doing kind of what a lot of people do, which is read the horoscope or read the human design and go, yes, yes, oh, that doesn't make sense, so this must be wrong, and then just moving on. It created a really helpful framework for digging into the topics and the themes that we needed to for the self-work that needed to happen. The shadow work was incredibly useful for me. The incarnation cross that my human design reflects makes so much sense. It's justified my whole life. It's exonerated me of the shame and guilt of every mistake I've made. It's justified that sense in me that I'm here to help others. And that's really liberating. So I think it is useful to have that at the start and to weave it through. But I think the fact that this was a holistic kind of piece of work as well means that it wasn't over reliant on any one piece of it making perfect sense, you know. In my case, it really did all kind of add up, was very valuable for that. On the day-to-day, it's definitely, it feels like I'm just in sync with myself for the first time than I have been for a long time. My anxiety has disappeared, like completely disappeared. I'm so aware of the fact that it's gone, and it's such a great relief. On the bigger picture, doing this work changed my direction in work, made me hungry to align my work with the values that I hold most dear, with the incarnation cross, frankly, that I have. Hopefully, you know, the first chapter of a new part of my life, which is just happy and balanced in all fields, in personal life, romantic attachments, in work life, day-to-day mood and sleep and everything. And I'm hopeful that that sticks around. I'm interested to see how some of the things that this has pushed me towards, which I love, e.g. embracing femininity, creativity, learning to follow and respond to life rather than try to charge ahead, just assuming that's the right thing always. I'm really curious to see what that means in terms of where I go next, because it's liberated me to do a lot more different things than the older version of me thought I was born to do, which was just stuff that was exhausting me and tiring me out and honestly didn't have a very strong values basis. If someone was asking me whether they should receive mentorship by Ella, I would say do it. I would say leave your cynicism, because that will hold you back. Always describe myself as a cynical person, but I'm really grateful that I didn't let that hold me back. I learned on the fact that I saw a true, authentic quality to Ella's content. Obviously, I knew you as well, right? But I saw the authenticity behind the words that you put out. I saw the real love that you've built with your partner. Whether all of it made sense to me or not, whether I agreed with all of it or not, didn't matter as much as just knowing that here's someone that has been on a kind of similar journey to me in some ways, in earlier life, and has come out of this extremely happy and fulfilled place. Like, there must be something to learn there. It was better than I expected, and a lot more aligned with some basic principle, well, not basic, but some really important principles of intentional living that we were taught at school, that professors gave to us in class at Stanford, that are the centerpiece of some of the most popular self-help books: Atomic Habits, routine, making a vote for yourself with every little thing that you do, accepting that you are malleable and changeable and that you can reinvent yourself infinite number of times. All those things had common ground with what Ella taught me, and so I think it's a great, what she's doing is an awesome way to spread that intentionality and spread that path to peace with more people than who I grew up with and who I went to school with.